All right, where did the losers go from this weekend? If you are Texas Tech, what do? If you are Baylor, what do? We'll start with you, Texas Tech. Now you get Oregon. Oh, you just lost on the road to Wyoming. It was bad and embarrassing and not good. So next week, you would love to play Tarleton State at home, but there's a God and he is vengeful. You have to play Oregon, a team that put up 81 points on Portland State. Portland State's bad, really, really bad. That doesn't mean Oregon's just this world-beating team. What it does mean is that Oregon can score a lot of points. Texas Tech, scored 20 regulation points with Tyler Shough at quarterback against Wyoming. That's not very good. I think for Texas Tech, what is next for the losers? For Texas Tech, if you beat Oregon, you've righted the ship enough, right? Night game and Lubbock, try to get the place rocking. There'll be a lot less hype now that you lost to Wyoming, especially in overtime, a couple of overtimes. I'm not excited about Oregon coming to play Texas Tech. If Texas Tech played the way it did last week, it loses by 21 points. Where do you go from here? Behren Morton has to be your starting quarterback. I watched very closely the Tech Baylor game last year, which I'm sure you want to forget. I understand that. But Behren Morton, after watching his film last season, I think is the best quarterback in that room. Tyler Shough, everybody, the whole town puts on for Tyler Shough. He's the best. He's awesome. We love him. And he's good, but not good enough to beat Wyoming. I don't think we're kidding ourselves by saying a quarterback change here is warranted. Like that's okay. And Shough, 338 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's not bad at all. There are some people out there who are like, yeah, keep him in the game. But 31 for 47 in an offense that obviously likes to pass the ball, those 338 yards are a bit of a misnomer. So are the 3 touchdowns. Getting to overtime helped push that needle. For Shough, it was a regulation, I don't want to say nightmare, but a regulation struggle at quarterback for a guy who was playing Wyoming. Talked to a lot of Tech fans, called a couple Tech experts at one of the radio guys and said, what do you do? He said, I think you just got to go Behren Morton. At least give a change so that the fan base is re-energized. At least make some sort of tweak so that you can bring life back into this thing. If you're TCU, where do you go from here? Oh, guys, I've had all the confidence in the world that you were going to go out and beat Colorado. I was shocked that you didn't. And again, a lot of credit to Colorado for that. The good part about this for TCU is you get Nicholls State. The bad part about this for TCU, are the fans going to show up? Where do you go from here, TCU? I first want to put a charge to the fans. Last week sucked. Last Saturday sucked. Show up to the game this weekend against Nicholls State. TCU obviously is going to beat Nicholls State. Out of the top 25, this team got to try to build a chip on its shoulder, become that underdog again that it was last year, and went 12-0 with that underdog mentality. You beat Nicholls State by 55, and I think you still ride Chandler Morris. You still ride Chandler Morris, who was, again, kind of the Tyler Shough deal. It's like, just his numbers aren't horrendous, I guess. But he didn't. If you watched the game, you thought, this guy's missing some bad stuff. Chandler Morris was not a Power 5, competitive starting quarterback on Saturday. To me, I didn't look at Chandler Morris and think, I'm scared of that guy. I don't think anybody in the league would be scared of that guy. But you might be in a spot where you got to ride it out for a little bit. Maybe he becomes that guy against Nicholls State, but you got to show up. That's the number one thing TCU can do. What can the losers do to try to right the ship? The fans got to show the support for the team. Because if TCU beats Nicholls State and then goes into a game against Houston on the road after Houston just beat UTSA and loses, if TCU loses to Houston or SMU, red button time. Red button time on this season. I'm Not confident in what TCU can do down the road if the ship is not righted with a 5-0 record the rest of the way in the next 5, I guess. Nicholls State should be a win. Houston should be a win. SMU should be a win. West Virginia and Iowa State should be wins. On paper, you should go 5-1. If you don't, now we're talking red button. What's going on at TCU? There's still enough back for this team to be good. I believe that. Whether you do or do not, my expectation's still high. Baylor Bears, where do you go from here? Delete the football program for a little bit. Turn it off and back on and see what happens. I mean, what a nightmare. That was far and away the worst loss in the conference. That's one of the worst losses in the history of the Big 12, probably. Yeah, because Texas State had never beaten a Power 5 team, and you gave them that. What do you do? Where do you go from here? You're going to have to go buy a whole new offensive line. The offensive line is terrible. It is the worst in the Big 12 based on what we saw Saturday. You're probably going to have to buy a new defensive line and a new secondary. Luckily, in college football, you can buy that. You can go in the portal and do that. A little bit too late now. Your quarterback situation, they let Blake Shapen play with a hurt MCL. That was idiotic. They took Blake out of the game because he was hurt. Then, knowing he had some kind of knee issue, put him back in the game. That's, if you're trying not to get the player hurt, then you don't put the player with a knee injury back in the game. Baylor, where do you go from here? I don't know, but it's not a good spot. And I think your coach is now in the hot seat. On Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.